what if it is eventually a go on Kinder Morgan? It's already been approved, but what if it's a go?
Tonight, advocating for a meaningful stake in resource extraction projects.
We're in dire circumstances right now.
The spring thaw has made the res roads in Siksika even worse.
I became promiscuous. I became, an alcoholic, a drug addict.
And she pulled herself back from the brink and now enjoys the company of her grandchildren. Good evening, I'm Beverly Andrews. The bill that will soon legalize cannabis is making its way through the Senate. The Senate Committee on Aboriginal Peoples continues its study of C-45 as it relates to Indigenous peoples of Canada. Earlier, it heard from officials of the Federal Ministry of Health. Here's Annette Francis with more.
This group of senators are tasked with looking at the implications and opportunities the new cannabis legislation would have on First Nations, Métis and Inuit communities. The Minister of Health, Jeanette Petitpas-Taylor, told committee the dialogue with Indigenous communities across the country had begun in 2017. She says there are diverse views in regards to cannabis. The minister says there's currently 4 licensed producers for medical purposes, and now there's another 14 applicants that are known to be affiliated with Indigenous groups.
Health Canada's application process, to obtain a federal license to produce cannabis for medical purposes is rigorous to protect the health and safety of Canadians. Understanding the complexities of this process, we developed a navigator system. This service refers Indigenous applicants to a licensing professional who can guide them through each step of licensing process. This service will help support participation of interested Indigenous people in the legal cannabis industry.
Senator Nancy Green-Rain had concerns when it came to the legalization of cannabis, especially in Nunavut. She read a letter from Isaac Shuyuk, which included the overcrowding in homes, the risk of safety for children, and the lack of treatment in mental health centers.
My big question is it possible under our legislation to delay the implementation for those parts of the country, like the territories, that might wish it to be done?
Parliamentary Secretary of Health Bill Blair said there would be no public benefit in a delay for the North. He says the rate of cannabis use is already high and a delay would leave it in the hands of criminals.
It also creates an opportunity for the government of Nunavut, as I discussed with their health and justice and finance ministers. It creates an opportunity for them to generate revenue that's currently going into criminal enterprise that can be publicly reinvested in those treatment facilities that currently are absent in those communities.
Today's meeting marks the end of the public testimony. Committee members will study the bill clause by clause. Annette Francis, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Back in 2016, the government of the Northwest Territories announced they would extend support for youth who are aging out of foster care. But one youth advocate in Yellowknife says the government needs to do more than just throw money at the situation. APTN reporter Charlotte Mort-Jacobs has more.
Each day, youth advocate Chelsea Thatcher works with 10 to 15 youth who have been impacted by foster care and social services. Now she is speaking out for the youth who need more support when aging out of the foster care system.
You could extend it until they were 30 and they wouldn't be ready because we're not getting to the heart of the issues of what they need.
In 2016, the Northwest Territories government did extend support for youth ages 19 to 23 who are aging out of foster care. Youth were able to enter into these voluntary agreements. Seems good on paper, but Thatcher says it's a complex situation and many youth only receive support in the form of a check.
The kids that I talk to every day, they want drop-in life skills programs so that they can come in without pressure, learn those life skills, be able to, do their taxes or learn about finances or learn how to cook a chicken or, do their laundry, but without having, to be hassled and haggled about it.
This spring, the NWT government released a report showing that more youth ages 16 to 18 are entering into permanent care. Thatcher says this age demographic, along with the 19 to 23-year-olds, slip through the cracks as they are considered low priority for overworked social workers. On top of that, many in that age range bounce around because it is harder to find foster parents willing to take on teenagers.
You know, you never really learn how to function in a family either. And a lot of these kids are Indigenous, and they're taken and they're put into families who are non-Indigenous, and their entire family structure is different.
While the youth who work with Thatcher at the Rainbow Coalition of Yellowknife were too shy to be on camera, they did pass along a message for the story.
They really want to move the focus of like all the pressure of their support system to be off of the social workers and into like the community needs to care for them, because they recognize that their social workers are overworked.
Charlotte Moore-Jacobs, APTN National News, Yellowknife.
And we would like to hear what you have to say about this or any other story. Here's how to contact us. Send an email to news@aptn.ca. Like our APTN National News Facebook page, follow us on Twitter @APTN News, or go to our website at aptnnews.ca. Rapidly melting snow is causing flooding in some parts of southern Alberta. It's so bad, the Siksika Nation, east of Calgary, has declared a state of emergency. Almost 30 homes in the community have been affected by rising water. Muddy conditions on most roads are hindering access for emergency vehicles and school buses. Chief Joseph Weaselchild says the community is still trying to recover from the 2013 flood that destroyed over 100 homes.
We're in dire circumstances right now due to the infrastructure, lack of funding, and a number of things that have compounded the situation over the years, beginning with the 2014 flood, the Siksika resources that were used on that, and the fact that our public works people were spending 80% of their time doing the rebuild homes, and as a result, our roads were not getting the proper upkeep.
Interprovincial disagreements over the Trans Mountain pipeline may have expensive repercussions at the pumps. We'll have more on that after the break. But first, let's look at tomorrow's weather outlook. Cloud covering the east coast, rain in St. John's and +8, Fredericton +7. Partly cloudy in Inukjuak and +3, some flurries in 0 in Happy Valley, Goose Bay. Cloud and +4 in Sept-Îles. Montreal is also cloudy and +7. Ottawa is also +7 with cloud, more cloud in Windsor and +8. 0 and cloudy in Kapuskasing and Timmins. Sunny and +5 in Norway House and The Paw, +2 in Churchill. Barron Rivers is +8 with sun, more sun in Winnipeg and +6. Regina is sunny and +4, also sunny in Swift Current at +7. Stony Rapids is partly cloudy and +5, sunny in La Ronge at also +5. A parliamentary committee is studying Bill C-69. The bill promises to overhaul the way resource extraction projects are approved and regulated. On Tuesday, several Indigenous leaders testified before it. Their suggestions to improve the legislation range from respecting Indigenous rights to enshrining informed consent. Chief Ernie Cray is of the Cheam First Nation, the co-chair of the Advisory and Monitoring Committee for Trans Mountain. He says the bill needs to be tweaked to allow Indigenous communities to be managers and joint regulators on projects.
What if it is eventually a go on Kinder Morgan? It's already been approved, but what if it's a go? They want to be inside and on this committee to work with other First Nations to ensure that best practices are employed in the construction of the Kinder Morgan pipeline, that they have a hand in it, that they're not standing outside the fence looking in, but they're inside the fence. They're working with regulators, other departments and agencies, and other First Nations.
It is no longer just a war of words between the premiers of Alberta and British Columbia. Now it's a trade war. The fight is over the Kinder Morgan pipeline expansion. Alberta wants it built, and British Columbia does not. The gas prices in British Columbia, already the highest in the country, could go up even higher APTN's Tina House has this story.
Just one day after the unsuccessful meeting last weekend, Alberta Premier Rachel Notley introduced Bill 12, which is meant to inflict pain on British Columbians.
We have been clear. Every option is on the table.
Bill 12 will limit the amount of gas and oil being shipped to BC, with Vancouver already known as having the highest gas prices in North America. Leonard Lebecan is gassing up, and he's angry about hearing the news about the fight over Kinder Morgan.
I'm not happy about it.
The current cost of gas in Vancouver is between $1.50 and $1.54 a litre, and if Bill 12 becomes law, then those prices could skyrocket up to an estimated $2 per litre.
Yesterday, the Prime Minister decided he's going to bail out Kinder Morgan with $2 billion. Why? Kinder Morgan is the biggest pipeline company in North America, and that $2 billion can go better places, affordable housing, better health services. You know, Prime Minister should quit jet setting all over the world trying to help the world and look after his own backyard first.
This legislation will be there if Alberta needs it.
Political science professor Patty Smith says that this could be potentially dangerous territory if Alberta decides to enact Bill 12, and also potentially illegal.
When I listened to Rachel Notley defend her saying she wants to use all the tools in her toolbox to defend Alberta and then not apply that logic to British Columbia in terms of protecting the environment, in terms of the concerns of Indigenous peoples, the vast majority of them still, even though some signed on for arrangements with Kinder Morgan, the vast majority of First Nations have not. And that's a hugely important situation in British Columbia with so much unceded territory.
Don't get me wrong, I'm not against economic development in our country, but I think it could, if it was done safely.
The federal government and the province of Alberta have started discussions with Kinder Morgan to alleviate the financial risk on the project for the company's shareholders, despite the continued opposition from the BC government. And BC's Attorney General announced BC will sue the province of Alberta if they enact Bill 12. Tina House, APTN National News, Vancouver.
Premier Rachel Notley of Alberta says she will cut off oil shipments to British Columbia after BC refused to allow the Trans Mountain pipeline expansion to go through. Saskatchewan quickly jumped on the Notley bandwagon. This dramatic move by Alberta and Saskatchewan will be felt by British Columbians at the pump.
Proceeds. There is nobody that I know of in British Columbia who will be left unscathed with both higher prices and the lack of supply.
Petroleum analyst Dan McTeague says gas prices in BC could jump up 45 cents, hitting the potential high of $2 a litre. That sticker shock would also spread across the country, ramping up gas prices for Canadians and would likely drive down the value of the loonie. British Columbia's Attorney General has called Alberta's proposed fuel restriction law unconstitutional and against the law. David Eby said the tabled legislation was never intended to go forward, but if it did, his province is ready to sue.
We believe that this bill is unconstitutional on its face.
As the bitter back and forth in the Trans Mountain pipeline project intensifies, BC Attorney General says Alberta's proposed fuel registration is unlawful.
We also believe that in the context of the remarks made by the government of Alberta, that they intend to use this legislation to try to force British Columbia to give up its jurisdiction to regulate the pipeline, it is even more unconstitutional. So clearly the legislation is a bluff. They don't intend to use it. If they did try to use it, we would be in court immediately seeking an injunction to stop them from using it, but we would probably...
Eby also said BC is expecting to announce soon that the government has filed a reference case to the courts to determine who has jurisdiction over the pipeline in the province. The bitter feud between Alberta and British Columbia over the Trans Mountain pipeline has politicians divided in Ottawa. The Conservatives are siding with Alberta. The NDP sympathizes with BC. Although the Liberals support the project, they are under attack from all sides.
Uncertainty over Trans Mountain is costing us $40 million a day, and $1 billion more is fleeing our country. Why is the Prime Minister shortchanging Canadians through his failure to deliver?
The BC government is just doing what it was elected to do. Standing up and following through an election promise is what governments are supposed to do. And I'll tell you, Mr. Speaker, I think Liberals could stand to learn a lesson from this. How can this government continue to ignore both their own election promises and the real concerns of British Columbians?
The Government of Canada, the only government that speaks for all Canadians, will make sure.
Meanwhile, the pipeline in northern Alberta has leaked approximately 100,000 liters of oil covering a 200-meter square area. The spill happened 10 kilometers from Zuma City. The pipeline is owned by Calgary-based Paramount Resources. They reported the spill to Alberta Energy Regulator last week. In a statement from Paramount, they told APTN that a cleanup crew is on site and that there's no danger to wildlife or waterways. The cause of the incident is still under investigation. After the break, we will meet a woman who overcame substance abuse and poverty to create a new life for herself. But first, let's look at the rest of tomorrow's weather outlook. +5 and sun in High Level, more sun and 7 in Peace River. Medicine Hat is sunny at +12, Lethbridge has some cloud and +7. Cloudy and +11 in Campbell River, Victoria and Bella Coola. Smithers is +8 with some cloud, some rain in Sandspit and +10. Dawson City is sunny at +2, cloud in Whitehorse and +3. Cloud cover and -7 in Ray Lakes, -2 and sunny in Fort Simpson. Some cloud in Pawatuck and -16, cloudy and -14 in Colville Lake. 0 and cloudy in Baker Lake, -4 and some sun in Chesterfield. Flurries in Joe Haven and -4, sunny in Iqaluit at -9.
Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Dennis Ward. Our top story tonight.
The Laughing Drum with host Tim Fontaine. Tuesdays following APTN National News.
Molly Boyce was on the streets drinking hairspray when we first met her in Thunder Bay. At that time, she wanted to get sober. That was 7 years ago. Willow Fiddler recently caught up with Molly and brings us her story.
Did I look that bad?
Molly Boyce can laugh about it now, hardly recognizing herself from several years ago.
You know, like I joke about it a lot, you know, when I see people and I say hi and all that, and oh, I didn't even recognize you. Why? Am I too clean? That's my joke, eh?
But the state of Boyce's life wasn't funny back then.
I don't know. I always thought that I was going to die. Yeah. Like I thought I was going to be the next one.
Barely surviving, Boyce decided she didn't want to die. Today, she's a success story. Just a couple of months ago, Boyce was valedictorian of her graduating class. Now she's working at the shelter house where she was once a client. Boyce's story is a familiar one. She experienced traumas early on in her life and felt like she had no one to turn to.
I became promiscuous. I became, you know, an alcoholic, a drug addict. Just because of that one trauma that I thought that I was crazy, you know.
Her addictions led to homelessness, moving from one town to another. By 2011, Boyce was ready for change. She was one of the first clients of the Shelter House's Kwekewin program, a treatment program for chronic alcoholics that provides a roof overhead and managed doses of wine. Boyce said she owes so much to the program.
They listened. They told me I mattered, you know. Yeah, and that's where my journey totally began, because somebody listened.
She spent 3 years in the Kwekewin program. Boyce said the most important part of her healing was reconciling with her father. When he got sick, Boyce ended up taking care of him. The two participated in a traditional healing circle together where she found closure before he passed.
And that was the greatest feeling, because me and him, we shared what actually happened to us, why our relationship was broken, you know. And we did a lot of forgiveness after that circle. And ever since then, I just been like, everything doesn't matter.
Boyce has even forgiven the person who almost killed her. The physical scars now a reminder of how far she's come.
I can't help but think of the journey we all have been through.
In her valedictorian speech, Boyce gave special credit to her children. Estranged from them for many years, she is grateful for the relationship she's been able to rebuild.
I'm blessed, you know, my children are so resilient, you know, after all these years, they still always welcome me home, you know.
But the best part of her journey?
My grandchildren. It's so rewarding. You know, just like what I was mentioning when you first got here, you know, my two oldest granddaughters, I didn't really know them until still recently.
Michelle Jordan is the executive director at Shelter House. She said the Kwekewin program works for clients in its own ways.
But we do have, you know, similar stories from other people who are now gone on their own and not living with addiction, have reconnected with their families, with the culture, and that's what we hope for everyone that's involved in the program.
Unfortunately, not all make it. Boyce said a lot of the people she lived with at the Shelter House have died. Grief and loss still a part of her story.
I don't know, it's survivor's guilt, I guess. It still gets to me, you know, like, why did I survive?
But working at the Shelter House is a chance for Boyce to inspire others. She said she sees how her generation suffers from the traumas of residential schools.
I wish I had a magic wand sometimes, you know, just to take, you know, the pain that I see, because I know the pain that they are feeling, you know.
Boyce said it helped having someone who believed and listened to her.
I have to take responsibility for the things I've done too, you know, and how I've handled the trauma that was done to me. See, now we don't have to handle it going to drugs and alcohol and all that, because we're no longer told to shut up, you know. We're getting our voice back, and, you know, let's use it.
Boyce plans to continue to use her voice. She's moving back to her home community of Iibmatoong First Nation, where she will study to become a nurse. And of course, enjoy being a grandma. Willow Fiddler, APTN National News, Thunder Bay.
What an inspiring story. And that is this Tuesday's APTN National News. And Tuesday means a new episode of Laughing Drum with Tim Fontaine is coming on in only a few minutes. So stay with us to catch it. I'm Beverly Andrews. Have a great night.